Today we will be reading from 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 15 through 27. Then Naaman and all of his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. Please accept now a gift from your servant." The prophet answered, "As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept the thing." And even though Naaman urged him, he refused. "If you will not," said Naaman, "please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry. For your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down, and he is leaning on my arm, and I bow there also. When I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this." "Go in peace," Elisha said. After Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said to himself, "My master was far too easy on Naaman, this Aramean, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him." So Gehazi hurried after Naaman. When Naaman saw him running towards him, he got down from the chariot to meet him. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "Everything is all right," Gehazi answered. "My master sent me to say, 2 young men from the company of the prophets have just come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing." "By all means, take 2 talents, said Naaman. He urged Gehazi to accept them, and then tied up the 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 sets of clothing. He gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them ahead of Gehazi. When Gehazi came from the hill, he took the things from the servants and put them away in the house. He sent the men away, and they left. When he went in and stood before his master Elisha, he asked, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" "Your servant didn't go anywhere," Gehazi answered. But Elisha said to him, "Was not my spirit with you when the man got down from his chariot to meet you? Is this the time to take money, or to accept clothes, olive groves, vineyards, flocks, herds, or men servants and maidservants? Naaman's leprosy will cling to you and your descendants forever." Then Gehazi went from Elisha's presence, and he was leprous as white as snow.
There is a line from a movie that helped make Cuba Gooding Jr. famous. The movie was Jerry Maguire, and the line was, "Show me the money! Show me the money!" And when I first saw this movie, I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's a bit out there, right? That's a bit out there. It's just a movie. That's not how people act. Certainly not athletes, right? But since then, there have been several well-documented athletes, a couple of which resided in Pittsburgh for a while, who would make these words seem tame, if you will. Now, I'm not going to mention any names this morning. I will say that if you use your imagination, probably a couple ex-Steelers come to mind. And while I'm not saying that their bodies are now covered with leprosy as white as snow, I will say things haven't worked out so well for them. In the aftermath of them shouting out loud for all to hear, "Show me the money." Were they driven by greed? Was it pride or ego, or did they just get caught up in the Silicon Valley Shuffle? For those of you who don't know what that is, you ought to be a Bible study on Wednesday nights. See, the Silicon Valley Shuffle is this dance we've been studying at Bible study. And no, we don't get up with music and dance around, but it starts out kind of slow, this Silicon Valley Shuffle, and it gets increasingly faster. And the steps are really simple. It goes like this: bigger, better, faster, more. Bigger, better, faster, more. Bigger, better, faster, more. Bigger, better, faster, more. Right? You get the idea. I don't know for sure what leads so many in our world today to get caught up in this vicious cycle. But in all honesty, I got to believe that greed is at the heart of it. That greed is playing a major part in this. Greed, by definition, is an intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, or food. Make no mistake about it, that greed is a driving force in the life of our lead character in this morning's passage of Scripture. But also, don't dismiss it. It is a driving force in the lives of so many in the world around us today. So many people seem to be shouting out, not literally, but by their actions, show me the money. Show me the money. Let us pray. Father, as we reflect upon your holy word, we pray now through the power of your Holy Spirit, you would open it up to us. Allow us to hear the message you know we need to hear, each and every one of us as individuals. Allow us to apply it as need be to our lives. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Greed is a disease. Make no mistake about it. It is a sickness that can subtly infect the life of anyone at any time, including, as we see in this morning's text, those involved in ministry. Right? Gehazi is involved in ministry. He is an assistant to the prophet Elijah. And greed is never acceptable, to be sure, but it's oftentimes rationalized by those who are caught up in it. It begins with us seeing something we want, which leads us to covet it, and then ultimately to do whatever it takes to get it, right? That's what greed can do. You say, what does it look like? Well, to be sure, sometimes it's as simple as just show me the money. More money, more personal wealth. But it can include the accumulation of stuff and toys, or maybe the relentless pursuit of fame, or maybe even just a thirst for pleasure in your life. It's not always just a money issue, but it oftentimes is an issue. In our Old Testament reading this morning, as we really draw to the end of our summer series on Old Testament characters, I know you're all thinking, well, we're well into fall, but this is not unusual for a summer series to go well into fall. Today's character, Gehazi, is an assistant. He's a servant to the prophet Elijah, as I've already said. He's present as last week's lead character, you might recall, Naaman, having been healed of his leprosy, returns to the prophet full of gratitude. He is so thrilled and blessed to be healed. He comes praising God, but he also comes bearing gifts. The gift, by the way, is nothing to sneeze about here. It has been determined that the gold and silver alone that Naaman was bringing back and now offering would be valued today at over $1 million. This was substantial, this gift that he's bringing back. That's what I call gratitude, right? The text says then Naaman and all of his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel, so please accept a gift from your servant. The prophet answered, as surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept anything. And even though Naaman urged him, he refused. So why? Why do you suppose Naaman refuses this generous gift of value over $1 million? Well, the text doesn't give us an explanation. It doesn't tell us why. But I think we can draw certain conclusions if we really think about it and reflect upon it. First of all, we might remember that at the conclusion of last week's message, we indicated that this healing that Naaman received was what? It was a gift from God, right? It was something he received by God. This was an act of grace alone, through faith alone, by God alone. And if we are to come to that conclusion, to accept any sort of payment, regardless of the motivation that Naaman may have had, might send the wrong message. First of all, to a new believer in Naaman, but also to any outside observer who might have been taking in this whole story as it unfolded. You know, it might have sent a message that God could, first of all, be bought, or that God really isn't offering any free gift at all here. I mean, remember that Naaman, well, he had this gold and silver with him from the very get-go, right? Brought it with him from the very beginning. Anyone who might have been watching the story unfold might have come to the conclusion that, hey, he's just waiting to see if God actually is going to heal him before he hands over his payment. Would have totally compromised the message of grace that God is sending here, that this was a free gift that God was offering him. Now, I know I'm speculating here. I understand that. The text doesn't explain why Elijah says no. Just says he refuses the gift. So with this, Naaman makes a commitment to Elijah's God, to Yahweh. And then he leaves, which for all intents and purposes should have been what? The end of the story. Really, that's where this story should have ended. But not so fast, says Gehazi. Not so fast. He enters the story beginning in verse number 20, where it says, after Naaman had traveled some distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elijah, the man of God, said to himself, my master was too easy on Naaman, this Arabian, by not accepting from him what he brought. As surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something for him. He has seen, he is coveting, and he is beginning the process of rationalization. That's what's going on here. He says, my master was too easy on Naaman. Now, a better translation for that word, too easy, is he denied or restrained Naaman. And that's sort of significant to understand it in that context. He's rationalized. He is saying in essence this, my master held back this general from expressing his gratitude. He restrained him from allowing him to do what he truly wanted to do, which was to merely say thank you. Elijah's refusal could even be construed as discourteous. That's the inference here in his words. He even used Elijah's very words as part of his rationalization. He truly does. You remember Elijah says to Naaman, as surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing. So what does Gehazi say? What does he say? He says, as surely as the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. Same words, right? What's he doing? Why would he use those words? Why would anybody, as surely as the Lord lives? We know why the prophet used them, because he believed this was God's will. Why then would Gehazi use them? He is transforming his greed into God's will for his life. That's what's going on here. People do this all the time, right? They see something, they covet it, and then they rationalize it. In the process, they try to call it God's will. This was God's will all along, right? People make that part of their rationalization process. I remember back, and this story popped in my head as I was thinking about this, back to my early days of ministry back in East Brady. There was a member of our church who was having his truck serviced at a local dealership. And while his truck was being serviced, it was a nice truck, by the way, he saw this brand new plastic black Chevy Avalanche. And this thing was nice. It was loaded. It was about a $40,000 vehicle, right? He is coveting this truck. That's what's going on. And he comes to me, his pastor, for counsel. And I try to talk some sense into him. I tell him, you really already have a really nice truck. Do you really need another truck? You need to really take some time. You need to think about this. You need to pray. Is this really what God is calling me to do? Ask God for direction before you make any sort of purchase. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, now I have really given him some sound advice. That's what I'm thinking. Till the next day, when I see him driving a brand new classic black Chevy Avalanche. Drives it right into the church parking lot, mind you. And I look at it and I said, well, what gives? I thought you were going to take some time. I thought you were going to pray about this for God's direction. And he says, well, I took your advice. I'm thinking, not sure you really took my advice here. He said, oh yeah. He said, I decided I'd fill out a credit app, and if I qualified for the credit, that would be God's answer to my prayer. And in essence, he's saying, much like our lead character today, it's not my greed at work here. This is what God wants me to do. God got my credit approved. As if getting credit in the early 2000s was hard. Mind you, we had a whole collapse of the financial system because getting credit was so easy in the early 2000s. Gehazi is rationalizing. That's what he's doing here. He's rationalizing, much as this individual in my church did. You can almost hear his thought process if you listen real closely and you read between the lines. He heads out to stop Naaman in his tracks, and you can just hear him. Probably thought, hey, this man is a millionaire. He's got more money than he knows what to do with. Otherwise, why would he be giving me this valued gift of over $1 million? He's saying this is just a drop in the bucket to him. Elijah, he should not have held him back, should not have restrained him. This was the Lord's will. It was the Lord who led Naaman to make such a generous offer. I mean, you can almost hear him, rationalize it as he's chasing after him. And sadly, the thought process doesn't end there. It can't end there because at some point in time, he has to rationalize what? Keeping a gift for himself. It's not just accepting it now for the ministry. He's got to somehow rationalize keeping it for himself. Probably thinking, you know what, my master, he has a lot too. Elijah really doesn't have any great needs, and I serve him faithfully. Maybe he doesn't need this God-given gift, this provision, but I sure could use it. And I don't know for sure, but that's what he's thinking. Maybe not. But there had to be a lot of rationalization going on. Just had to be. And here's the thing about rationalization. When we begin to rationalize, we can wash away the guilt associated with just about anything we do. Right? When we start to rationalize, we can wash away any guilt associated with that act. We can even give ourselves permission by rationalization to do things that are inappropriate. It's just the way it is. There's great power in rationalization. Ultimately, it allows a greedy person to line his pockets with absolutely 0 sense of remorse. No remorse whatsoever. They have convinced themselves that there is no sin to even confess. And the process, of course, transcends greed. It applies to just about any sin when you begin to rationalize. But let's listen again to how things unfold as this plays out. Beginning with verse 21, it says, Gehazi hurried after Naaman. When Naaman saw him running towards him, he got down from his chariot to meet him. Is everything all right? He asked. Everything is all right, Gehazi answered. My master sent me to say 2 young men from the company of the prophets have just come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 sets of clothing. By all means, take 2 talents, said Naaman. He urged Gehazi to accept them, and then he tied up the 2 talents of silver in 2 bags and the 2 sets of clothing. He gave them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them ahead of Gehazi. When Gehazi came to the hill, he took the things from the servants, he put them away in the house. He sent the men away, and they left. When he went in and stood before the master, Elijah asked him, "Where have you been, Gehazi?" "Your servant didn't go anywhere," Gehazi answered. He pursues the goods. That's what he does. His greed has brought him to the point of coveting, concocting a plan, and there is seemingly not a single word of prayer that goes on here as he goes off in search of his little fortune, if you will. He has no real concern, it would not appear, for the impact that his actions might have on this new believer. There's no concern about Naaman and how this might affect him. what he's about, and there is no concern about how it might impact his ministry that he's a part of. We see this, unfortunately, play out in ministries oftentimes. You know, you can go back to the 80s and Tammy Faye and Jim Baker, Jimmy Swaggart, where whether it be greed or whether it be sexual promiscuity, it doesn't really matter. It brings down ministry. It brings down ministry as what sin does, and it affects so many people who may be on the cusp of believing, who may be searching and hoping for something that they can trust. He has no concern about that. He's not worried about what this might do to the ministry of Elijah. He just goes off. You know, and that's what greed does, really, isn't it? That's what greed does. It discounts the needs of others. It selflessly focuses on what you want, what you covet. It takes you very quickly to show me the money, is what it does. What makes it even worse in this case is he knows exactly what he's doing, right? Maybe he has rationalized, but he knew it was wrong. Otherwise, why the lies, right? Why not just be upfront about it? He tells Naaman this elaborate lie in order to swindle him out of his fortune, out of his money. All was not well, as he proclaimed. The master did not send him. There were no needy sons of prophets. These are lies, lies, and more lies. This is what led up to allowing him to receive this gift from Naaman that he ought not to have received. This was grand theft, if you will. But as I oftentimes say, sin begets sin, right? One sin leads to another sin. Coveting leads to the sin of lying, leads to another sin of stealing, and he's not even done yet. He's still not done. You think to yourself, maybe even as you sit here today, what's the harm in desiring good things? What's the harm? Well, nothing. Nothing wrong with desiring good things, but let me assure you, once you start down that path, it can be a very slippery slope. It really can be. It's pretty easy to get from, that's really nice, to, I got to get me some of that, to show me the money. I mean, it's a slippery slope. It's so easy once you start to desire things. Next for Gehazi, there's a cover-up. You see, there is a cover-up. He returns from his mission, bringing about more lies to the prophet Elijah. When Elijah asks him where he's been, he says, your servant went nowhere. What? He went nowhere? Of course, here's the thing. Lying to a prophet of God, never a good idea. They seem to have an inside track, right? Elijah, unfortunately, has to deliver the bad news. Leprosy that Naaman had encountered and been healed of would now afflict Gehazi and his family, his descendants. Text says he left the presence of the prophet covered in leprosy, snow white. And that's a tale that we ought to take notice of. I mean, I'm serious. We really need to take notice of this sort of story. And at some level, it would tell us that while the human imagination can be highly creative, it is not always highly creative for good purposes. He was very creative. He said, well, there's a creative person, right? What a story. But sometimes creativity is used for evil. The imagination can run wild with ideas that you would think incomprehensible to the average person. I mean, who would have ever dreamed up? Who would ever imagine this image, horrific image of tens of thousands of Jews being exterminated in oversized gas chambers? I'll tell you who had a great imagination. He was highly creative, if you will. The potential for evil also exists when people become creative. When people become creative. Imagination is identified as the act or power of forming a mental image of something not present to the senses or never before perceived in reality. It is a creation of the mind, is what that definition says. And to be sure, creativities and our imaginations can help us dream dreams. And some of those dreams will come true and it will lead to wonderful inventions. But it also can lead to evil fantasies. It was the late self-help author Napoleon Hill who once wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Gehazi saw, it coveted, leading him to conceive a plan of action. And through rationalization, he believed that it was not only okay, it was God's will, and then he set out to achieve his goal at all costs. I'm not saying you have to stop dreaming, folks. Dreaming is a good and powerful thing. The imagination is a wonderful thing, but I will say that you need to be careful what you're dreaming about and prayerful about its place in your life. We need to also understand, as I've already stated, that while rationalization is a human, natural human behavior, it tends to make all sin less objectionable. That's what rationalization does. By definition, it attempts to explain or justify one's own or another person's behavior or attitude with logical, plausible reasons, even if these are not true or appropriate. Its goal, rationalizing, is often to explain away bad behavior. That's what the goal of rationalization oftentimes is. It will attempt to make us feel good about what we're doing. It will attempt to explain or justify just about anything, from cheating on your taxes to cheating in a game of cards to cheating on your spouse. You can almost rationalize anything if you try hard enough. Do not fall into the trap of rationalizing your sin. You need to find somebody you trust, invite them to hold you accountable when they see you beginning this process of rationalization. And finally, in all matters, but especially money matters, we need to pause and examine what our motivation is. When it comes to money matters, when it comes to purchases, we need to ask ourselves the question, is this about greed? Is greed leading me to make this decision? We've got to be honest with ourselves when we're about to make a major purchase. We need to invite other people to weigh in. Do you think this is a wise choice? And we need to actually listen. It is so easy to start sliding down this slippery slope. From admiring to lusting after, coveting, going after at all costs. You need to pray daily. Pray daily about your financial decisions. Especially, as I said, when it involves a major purchase. Why do you want that new car that you're looking at? That new classic black Chevy Avalanche? Why is it you want it? Right? Why do you have to have the latest phone, the new TV, the bigger house, the other job that you're contemplating? We need to really pause and say, what's driving this? What is motivating me in this decision-making process? And you need absolutely to invite God. Let me say this. Sincerely invite God to weigh in on the decision. You need to do that. Sincerely invite Him. Because it's so easy to fall into this trap of show me the money. Happens to professional athletes, I've now determined, all the time. And if it happened to the assistant of a great prophet, guess what? We need to be careful because it can happen to us as well. That's the nature we possess as human beings. The inclination to say, show me the money. Only by God's grace and the power of the Holy Spirit do we overcome that. Father, we come before you, humble, seeking your grace, mercy, your forgiveness for all the times that we were driven by greed. And if we're honest with ourselves, there have been different times in our life where that's happened. For some of us, maybe more than others. Lord, we're sorry. We also want to make decisions for the right reasons. We want to make decisions that will glorify you, that will lead to greater opportunities in ministry. And so we pray, Lord, that through your strength, through your guiding hand, you would not only equip us, but you would be our guiding source, our light, our direction, roadmap, if you will, to doing things your way, where it's not about us, but it's about others, and it's about you. We pray this in Jesus' name.